GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, this is Laurence Fox, only it's not, I'm Dawn Neeson. He's not even identifying me as me tonight. I've just turned up another tall, lanky blonde for you. Any case, tonight I will be taking on the Great Food Bank debate. I'm going there. Are the claims that someone on £35,000 a year true that they have to rely on the food bank? I'll be picking that one apart. Then I'll be speaking to Conservative MP Lee Anderson about levelling up. Or is it levelling down or levelling sideways? No one knows anymore. What is it? Why can't anyone seem to make it work? Then, as it's Friday night, yes! I will be asking my guests how much they know about alcohol. Not as much as me, probably. And don't forget, perhaps most importantly, that we want to hear from you. Send in your views my way, gbnews@gbnews.uk, and that's all coming up after these marvellous headlines with the gorgeous Tatiana Sanchez.
Dawn, that's very kind. Thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The NHS will see the biggest strike action ever in the industry next month as the Unite union announced 10 further days of industrial action by ambulance workers in the coming weeks. They join 10,000 ambulance staff with the GMB union, along with the Royal College of Nursing, in joint action on the 6th of February. The workers across England, Wales and Northern Ireland are walking out in a long-running dispute over pay and staffing. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky has been holding talks with 50 Western nations in Germany today to garner further support in their fight against Russia. Kyiv have requested 300 tanks. The US announced a further £2 billion worth of support for Ukraine, while the UK has said it will provide 14 Challenger tanks. Meanwhile, Germany have yet to make a decision on whether they will send tanks to the war-torn country. The US Defence Secretary, Lloyd Austin, commended the UK for agreeing to supply Challenger 2 tanks. A new report into England's fire and rescue services says reforms are needed as a matter of urgency. The watchdog says just 2 of the 6 recommendations made by the Chief Inspectorate have been fulfilled. In an annual report, the Chief Inspector, Andy Cook, says he's frustrated at the lack of progress made since inspections began in 2018. But the Chief Fire Officer at Leicester Fire and Rescue, Callum Faint, said he's confident the force is improving. The Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has promised a thorough review of the force's culture and standards in an effort to root out corrupt officers, such as former officer David Carrick. Mr Rowley said the next 2 years are critical to achieving our goals, including assurances such as investing in diversity to become an anti-racist organisation. It comes as the National Police Chiefs Council are urging police chiefs right across England and Wales to have all officers checked against national databases by the end of March. The Prime Minister has been given a fixed penalty notice by Lancashire Police for failing to wear a seatbelt whilst in the back of a moving car. The Prime Minister was filming a social media clip on his way to yesterday's Levelling Up announcement in the North West. He's already apologised, with his spokesman saying he made an error of judgment. In the last few minutes, in a statement by Downing Street, they say Mr Sunak will comply with the fine. TV, online and DAB+ radio, you're with GB News. Now it's back to Dawn.
Well, we made it. It's Friday night. The working week is done. Time to have some fun. Hold on, but not so fast. Because I'm here to warn you, a very scary new problem we're all facing. Guess you could call it a new pandemic, if you like. It's one that causes frothing at the mouth, a red blotchy face, and terrible incontinence of the verbal kind. Even worse, there's no known cure. It's the pity plague, or rather the self-pity plague, where absolutely nothing is your fault and there is always someone else to blame. God knows quite where this cult of victimhood actually started, but it's spreading faster than COVID in a bat-bothering Chinese laboratory. The high priest of playing the blame game is, of course, just checking my notes here. Oh, yeah, how can we forget? Prince Harry. A man, and I'm using that term rather loosely, who has no shame when it comes to absolving himself of all responsibility for anything and everything he's ever done. Sex, drugs, Nazi uniforms, dodgy women. Yeah, the Las Vegas stripper from his naked pool playing days, not the missus, obviously. Make it up if you want. Nothing, repeat, absolutely nothing has ever been Harry's fault. But while we can snigger over a bloke who whines about having a smaller bedroom than his big bro, despite it being in a bloody palace, pity plague is actually quite serious. Take today's obesity crisis, for example. 2/3 of Brits are overweight. That's 26% of us are dangerously so. Our kids are fat before they even leave primary school. But hey, why take responsibility for our own health when we can blame someone else, especially a Tory government? Cretins, how dare they force us to eat fast food and takeaways and cake. Same with exercise. You'd really need to be as thick as a mince not to realise that keeping active helps health. Even if it's going for a walk. But no, we actually live in a society where we expect doctors to prescribe exercise, or we can't possibly do it. And if our kids are hideous brats, it's not our fault as mums and dads, is it? No, it's the school. Huh? What's that about? Schools are there to teach English, maths, history, etc., not act as surrogate parents. The list is endless. Look, OK, let's take jobs that don't pay enough. Even though we don't want to get another one or work overtime, bother saving or cutting a cloth. No, again, no personal responsibility involved at all. Likewise, the dreaded food bank debate, where workers on above average income are forced to use them, but much more of that coming later. For God's sake, how have we got to this state of affairs in just 3 generations? It's a cliche to say during the war, only fools and horses granddad style, or was it uncle? Can't quite remember. But cliches are cliches for a reason. They're true. Older generations had pride. They took responsibility for themselves and owned their own actions. The idea of a government micromanaging because they themselves couldn't cope was totally abhorrent. Now, I don't like to get personal, but I'm going to. My nan and granddad were both raised in what is now unimaginable poverty, the proper stuff, you know, going to schools with no shoes on their feet, that sort of thing. To this day, my mum still asks how much and knows to the penny what she has available to spend. How to budget and to be self-sufficient were life lessons she learned in the post-war years. And she's never forgotten. A woman truly immune to today's pity plague. Of course, life has moved on. It's better, easier, more comfortable. No one's bombing us yet. We're supposedly happier. Are we, though? Back to our perma-miserable master of the blame game, Prince Harry. Actually, there's a thought. I guess we could call our pity plague gingivitis, couldn't we? See what I did there? Oh, hold on. Sadly, there's already a gum disease already called that, but at least there's a connection. Both it and the ginger winger's pity plague leave a very bad taste in the mouth. But first, I'm asking, do you believe as many people need food banks as is claimed? Email your views at gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews. Levelling up. Did we ever find out what that is? It was in the Tory manifesto in 2019, but a lot of things were, weren't they? But has anyone actually been levelled up yet, or levelled sideways, or what was the new phrase that we used? I can't remember what it was. They're changing it on a daily basis, a bit like the Prime Minister. It doesn't matter now that it's old news. It's now gauging up, stepping up, that was it, gauging up, wasn't it? Stepping up or enhancing communities. Right, will that make a difference though? I'm going to talk to an expert on this. Well, actually, he's not an expert, he's pretty clueless as well, I think is about to tell me. Join me to discuss it is Red Wall Conservative MP Lee Anderson. Hello, Lee, there you are. Lovely to speak to you tonight. How are you? Happy Friday.
How you doing? Well, thanks for the clueless label. I've never been called that before. No.
That's a lie. I bet your missus used to call that all the time. Right, OK, so come on, Lee, explain in baby steps to a complete idiot, you know, Rishi Sunak, let's call him, what is levelling up? What does it mean? What's going on? And is it working?
Well, I think the people get mixed up with this, because when we first come into Parliament 3 years ago, Boris said that levelling up was, and a quote, that that talent is spread evenly in this country, but opportunity isn't. And that's what levelling up's all about, is making sure that opportunity is spread equally across the country. And that means spending a few quid with these levelling up, with this levelling up money. And you know what? I'm not going to complain about this too much, because in Ashfield, I've done pretty good. I've had the record amount of Towns Fund and Future High Streets Fund, 2 new school rebuilds, money from a hospital. Looks like we've got a railway coming, a technology centre, our theatre's being redeveloped. So my shopping list, my shopping basket, it is full. But I hear some people whinging and moaning over the past couple of days about the South's getting more than the North. That's nonsense. You know, there's more people live in the South, for one, and there's deprivation in the South. Let's be honest. Look at places like Jaywick. That's probably one of the most deprived areas in the country. I'm fairly sure that's in the South. And look, in the North, don't slag us off too much in the North. We're not still walking about with whippets, greyhounds and rushing home to get the pigeons in and wearing our flat caps. So, you know, we do all right in some parts, but in other parts we need a little bit of help. And in places like Ashfield and Mansfield and Bassetlaw, we've done pretty well from the levelling up. So I'm chuffed to bits.
So you're happy. And what do your constituents make of it? Are they happy with the levelling up process? Are they pleased that this Tory policy is actually happening?
Well, let's be honest, you know, they're happy when they see the headlines, 70 million, 100 million, 150 million, which is probably what I've got, with all the different projects chucked in. But at the end of the day, I've always said, Dawn, that it doesn't matter how much you spend in the red wall areas, it doesn't get you any extra votes. I mean, I've said this to the previous prime ministers. What they want to see, they want to see police on the streets. They want to see they want to be able to get an appointment to the GP. They want to be able to have a good hospital, a good education. And they need the migrant boats sorting out on the channel. That's what people want. If you sort that out, that's what will please people on the doorstep, not these shiny new buildings, which are good things, and it brings good things to our area. But, you know, Red Wall voters are quite conservative in their politics, although they've always voted Labour, but they want to see all those things I've just listed.
But when you say that to the leaders of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak and Hunt, I just say Hunt, by the way, I mean, what reaction do you get back? Are they listening to you?
Well, I mean, when I first got elected, I had this conversation with the previous Prime Minister, and they I'm not sure whether they get it or not, Dawn, to be honest, because I've just turned my phone off. I've always said that, that, you know, people, you know, in the North and in the Midlands and the Red Wall, they're used to deprivation. They're used to a little bit of poverty. They're used to, you know, having to get up in the morning, go to work and do all these rubbish, crappy jobs like working down the pits and working in the mills, etc. And we've seen in the North before with some projects, we've built these big, shiny new buildings, and there's nothing in them 5 years later. Like I say, what they really want is good education for the kids, a good hospital, and good outcomes for the children.
Do you actually think the Conservatives can do it? In your constituency and the areas around there, do you think the Conservatives have actually got any hope?
Yes, I do. I think they've got hope because, you know, I talk to people on a regular basis, Dawn, in my constituency. I'm embedded in my community. I'm from here. This is where I was born. I've never lived more than 5 miles from where I was born. And yes, voters, especially first-time Conservative voters, are a little bit grumpy with us at the moment. But when you ask them the Keir Starmer question, do you like Keir Starmer and what he stands for? The answer is, no, I don't like him, and I don't know what he stands for.
But that's the problem, is I don't know what he stands for. Do you think, actually, being honest here, Lee, that you would have a better chance of being re-elected if Boris was back in charge?
No, I don't, because, you know, constituents, although a lot of mine actually love Boris, I've got a lot of time for Boris, they don't like change all the time. They want stability. I always asked for a little bit of boring. Now, when Boris was in charge, for all the positives, it was a little bit like a soap opera at times. With the front pages. As MPs, you're waking up in the morning, you're thinking, "Oh dear, what's on the news? What's in the paper?" And for the last few months, to be honest, Dawn, it's been quite boring in politics, and the media trying to dig up stories. And I mean, we've seen Rishi today fined for not wearing a seatbelt. I think that's pretty pathetic, to be honest. I think they're going to make a meal of that. That's going to be on the front pages tomorrow. Look, people want to go to the ballot box every 5 years. They want to put the cross on a paper, go home and live their lives, and they want all this nonsense that we keep producing for them.
Lee, I'm just going to ask you one final question quickly here. I mean, you say politics has been boring. I mean, it hasn't been that boring for you personally this week. And a lot of our viewers and listeners tonight, I think you talk an awful lot of sense, and you have spoken an awful lot of sense. But I know you've got a lot of flack over your comments on food banks and how people on food banks, using food banks, are earning certain amounts of money. Can you just talk a little bit about, say, what it's been like for you this week and some of the flack you've had back on that?
Well, it's just another day in the office, unfortunately, Dawn, for me. I get a lot of flack, but I'm not too bothered, to be honest. My haters are my motivators. And I've done an interview today about food banks. Look, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, our food bank was our back garden. My dad had vegetables in. He had carrots, peas, beans, potatoes. And at the bottom of the garden, we had chickens, rabbits and ducks. That was our food bank. And my parents were more resourceful, as were my grandparents, and I was brought up that way. If you want more, you work more. And it's as simple as that. I know things are tough with the energy bills. I'm not a fool, but we've got to take personal responsibility and stop complaining on social media and blaming the government for everything. This is a great country. People are literally dying, Dawn, on boats to get to this country because they know how good it is. And unfortunately, there's a few people here and some of the media that keep beating us up every day, and quite frankly, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Right, OK. Well, thank you so much. I'm not going to beat you up, Lee. Thank you. It's smashing to talk to you tonight on a Friday night. Thank you for giving us your time. Have a lovely weekend. Get back to your whippets. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not stereotyping the North. I know you haven't all got whippets. I know. In any case, I'm going now. Up next, we'll be having a chat on how nurses are having to use food banks to survive in this cost of living crisis. I'll be back soon. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory.
twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
On Mark Dolan tonight in a world exclusive, Katie Price joins us live to talk fame, love, money, plastic surgery and her hopes for the future.
Get tuned in as for GB News. I'm meeting up with my old mate, Mark Dolan. It's been ages since I've done an interview with him.
That's Katie Price on Mark Dolan tonight on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. I'm glad you hung around. It's going to get much better. We have wine coming in. Right, a former cabinet minister has doubled down on his criticism of nurses using food banks after his comments were branded disgusting, heartless and out of touch. Former Levelling Up Secretary Simon Clarke said the average nurse's salary of £35,000 a year is not a salary on which you need to be relying on a food bank. This is such a huge debate, isn't it? Right, now joining me now to debate this is former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Paul Connu. Welcome. And the very gorgeous and wearing a lovely suit, I have to say, Reem Ibrahim, political commentator. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for coming in on a Friday night. Really appreciate it. We do have wine coming, by the way. Right, now, what do we think about this? Paul, I'm going to come to you first because you have actually got annoyed about Conservative politicians commentating on who and who shouldn't be using food banks. Yes. So do you think they should just shut up and let nurses get on with using food banks?
I think this has been, for the government, has been a week which Armando Iannucci wouldn't have dared to a think of an episode like this week, culminating with tonight's news that Rishi Sunak has had his second fixed penalty fine. And Boris Johnson bouncing around Davos while the Prime Minister is trying to stay at home. Police corruption and rape. You know, it's unbelievable. But I think among this week, it was a classic own goal by a former cabinet minister, a man on, well, he's now on £84,000 a year as an MP. He was a lot more when he was for a brief time, the Levelling Up minister, and before that, the first Secretary to the Treasury. I mean, it is arrogant, because apart from the salary, MPs have generous expenses, some would argue too generous. And I just think it was insulting to the nurses, and his figures were wrong as well. Yes, the average pay, but that takes into account top-line nurses, you know, senior nurses have been around for 20 years, might get up to 47,000. But what about the young nurses whose average pay is between 20 and 25,000?
Okay, right, Reem, I'm going to come to you on this one now. So the current average salary in the UK is 22,756, which is less. I take the point that some are on more, some are on less. Less than the average earnings of a nurse or a teacher who's on 32,000. So if the average UK income is £27,756, why are we all using food banks? Why are there huge queues at food banks? Why is it just the nurses and the teachers and those in the public sector who are also going out on strike?
Look, I first of all want to say I think that, you know, we are sort of in an incredibly privileged position to sort of be talking about the fact that these individuals obviously felt the need that they had to go to food banks. But look, I think that the majority of British people are able to budget and able to understand how to sort of allocate that money to their food. And, you know, food and heating and energy bills, you know, those prices are increasing as a result of government policy, which has directly caused inflation. But again, I think that the majority of people can can survive on that amount of money. I graduate this year, and my graduate job probably won't be anything more than £25,000 a year, and I live in London, so I will have to learn to budget, or maybe I'll end up on a food bank in the next few months.
Do you live alone, or do you share it?
So I live with my family, and I decided to not move out at all during university, and actually I chose a university close to home just so that I wouldn't be able to afford rent in London. But again, I think that the majority of people are able to sort of budget that. I don't understand why nurses that are on upwards of £35,000 a year are having to go to food banks. But I think that, look, when people feel that they need to get there, they do. I think that what we need to sort of change is this culture around spending. I think during COVID, we sort of spent a huge amount of money because we were able to, because we were at home. We need to learn to budget more and actually prioritise where we spend our money.
But hospitals aren't setting up food banks sometimes in the hospital for fun. There is a need for this. And the costs often of doing a nursing job, especially if you're a young nurse, is prohibitive by the time you've paid your travel costs, your fuel, even having to, if you've got a car, you have to pay to actually, many hospitals pay to park it.
Which is ridiculous, I agree. But Paul, sorry, excuse me. Don't you think that Reem has a point that, and several of the politicians that you've criticised have made the point that maybe with a bit of help to budget and a bit of common sense about how you spend your money, there would be less reliance on food banks for some of these?
It's very patronising for MPs on their salaries and perks. I mean, I've seen MPs who actually charge their poppies on their expenses. This is, if anybody's not qualified to really pontificate and lecture nurses about budgeting,
does it matter how much they earn? Isn't it really just about the actual sort of the reality of the situation? I mean, somebody could sort of be earning below £20,000 a year and actually say the exact same point. I don't think where it comes from really matters, but the facts matter. And the fact of the matter is the majority of people aren't earning as much as nurses, and the majority of people are not on food banks.
Well, that's true. Although we don't know, because there hasn't been, as far as I can see, any proper study of private sector workers who may be at food banks. We don't really know that. So I think it's targeting nurses, as certain MPs did, was a crass PR own goal. I mean, I know one senior Tory MP friend of mine who actually buried his head in his hands and said, another own goal, in fact. And I'm glad to see Michael Gove rather slapped down, in fact, the MPs who came out and attacked them, try to dictate how nurses should budget.
Yeah, I've got to say I do agree, and I think that we shouldn't be attacking nurses, but what we should be attacking is actually the failure of our education system. The fact that we haven't been taught financial literacy, the fact that we have, I graduate this year, I've never been taught how to budget my own money. My first job when I was 16, I was earning £5.50 an hour, and I was somehow able to get by, during school, and granted I was living at home, but that covered my travel. But you just learn to budget yourself. I think this is a failure of the education system. The majority of people my age going into the workforce do not know how to budget, and we haven't been taught how to.
I think there's some truth in that, but I also think that the current crisis on the cost of living is very different, and I think for well-paid, I think politicians, are not overpaid, but they are much better paid than the average nurse. And to pontificate is simply and criticise nurses and tell them how they should budget better is actually arrogant and insulting.
Going back to Reem's point, does that mean you can only have an opinion on this and criticise if you are on the same income as? Well,
no, I'm a believer in free speech, but if you're so foolish as to come out with that sort of attack, expect the backlash.
So, I mean, the thing is, a lot of the, not necessarily one we're talking about, but a lot of politicians that you've had a go. I mean, there's three of them altogether, isn't there?
Well, Simon Clarke is the main.
Lee Anderson, who we've had on here, and Brendan Clark-Smith. You've called them arrogant and counterproductive to talk about public sectors using food bank workers. Now, they've also offered advice on budgeting and how to prepare meals cheaply. Lee, in particular, has done so. Now, the one thing I would like to...
Well, hang on a minute. Lee's talking about sort of your back garden being your sort of allotment. In fact, a lot of the people involved in nursing haven't got a back garden.
That was how he was... But to Reem's point about being taught budgeting, I mean, Rishi Sunak goes on about teachers all maths until we're 60 or whenever he wants to do it. But, teachers' basic budgeting, I mean, sort of like quadratic equations are pointless compared to running a budget, a family budget, and feeding yourself.
Exactly. We're not talking about tax. We're not talking about how to actually budget our money. I think when it comes down to really simple things like getting, there are various different schemes that you can get onto that mean that you get sort of cheaper travel. Even if you're a student, you get sort of discounted travel on most TfL buses. So I think that the fact that these things aren't taught to us.
What about just for example, the divorced nurse who is a mother of two, whose childcare costs wipe out a large chunk of her salary anyway?
Well, the primary reason we have
so
such
an MP
high...
telling her she doesn't know how to budget is patronising and insulting.
Yes, but the reason why we have such high childcare costs is because of the extortionate regulation that the government have put forward. I mean, the fact that we have such high child staff ratios essentially mean that the government are forcibly increasing prices. So I think we should put the blame
It's also
to the
it's also another one of my pet themes. It's also another legacy of Brexit, along with the chronic shortage of care workers and NHS workers. The B word, which everyone's running...
The B word Freesat. We actually have a B word collection box here. Anytime it's a swear box, every time someone uses it, you have to give me a £5.
Right.
The B word.
I'll give it to you afterwards.
Which I would donate to the food bank or something. The one thing I want to ask you, though, here, Paul, in fact, both of you, why is it OK for food bloggers like Jack Munro, very left-wing, and did an amazing job telling people how to budget, what to go and buy, what's cheap in which supermarkets, how to prep a meal on 30p to pluck that from thin air,
Martin Lewis, money-saving expert, why is it OK for them, who obviously earn that much? But,
exactly.
They're able to do that.
Why is it OK for left-wing people to come out with a similar thing, but if it's a right-wing politician that does it, or a Conservative politician, not even that right-wing, why is that an issue?
I totally defend their right to come out and to say it, but...
You've called them arrogant and counterproductive.
Yes, exactly,
But you don't say that about Martin Lewis or Jack Munro.
Well, I don't agree there that it's the same. But if anybody's entitled to attack them as well. Free speech allows that. But, as I said before, take the backlash. And I don't think the public, we haven't seen any snap polls on it, but I doubt the public were on the side of the MPs who actually condemn nurses and, for going to food banks or saying they couldn't manage their budgets.
Actually, very interesting to hear what you think out there, so do let us know tonight, please do. Reem, do you think there is an element of this issue, in particular the food bank issue, which is incredibly emotive? It is damaging to the whole food bank business, if I can use that phrase, and the people that are really, really down on their uppers and need to use them. Do you think it has become a political football and the unions, dare I say, are using it to score political points against the government they want to bring down?
Absolutely. I think that, look, unions at the moment specifically are using food banks as a sort of political tool in order to sort of criticise the government. And, you can criticise the government in many ways, but when you're actually using information that isn't factual, that is incredibly emotive, I think it's unfair. And I think that, look, when you've got these unions that are sort of encouraging, sort of saying that nurses need to use these food banks, actually, again, that is taking it away from those people that actually genuinely are homeless or genuinely do need to be able to go to food banks and receive that care.
One quick comment. Sorry, we've got to go. Just one quick comment.
But conversely, you could argue that the Sunak government are adopting a position on the strikes of not even negotiating on pay because the Tory party is currently almost in a civil war, and that is to keep happy the right wing of the party.
In the back seat of a car with that seatbelt on. Unfortunately, we have to go there. Thank you so much. Right, thank you both of my guests on that. A very heated debate coming up with the departure of Jacinda Ardern as Prime Minister of New Zealand. I want to ask if women in politics still face more scrutiny than men. Back very soon. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Laurence Fox's show. I'm Dawn Neeson. So he just, it's another tall blonde. Just make what you will of that. Right, lots of you have been getting in touch with me about my question. Do you believe as many people need food banks as is claimed? So let's see what you've had to say on this one. Right, one viewer, well, give us your name for God's sake. I think it's disgusting that nurses have to go to food banks. Meanwhile, Elliot says, no, I don't. There is obviously some need, but I think it's been exaggerated by politicians and some sections of the press for partisan reasons. The idea that many Brits would starve without food banks when they didn't even exist in the UK not so long ago is absurd. Pretty much what a lot of people are saying, I think. Right, Sally says, I'm always puzzled by the amount of people who raise their hands in horror at having to use food banks. Surely we should be grateful that a kind people are working really hard to put together and distribute food to people who need help. Get over yourselves, not me personally, I hope, and just be grateful for the help and support people are willing to give. And I've got a friend who runs a food bank and they do work incredibly hard, so big shout out to people that are actually at the sharp end of this. Meanwhile, Carol says, how pompous to say we weren't taught to budget. No one was. Circumstances differ in every family. Absolute arrogance. Who are you to say who spends what? You don't know. Me personally? Oh, right, thanks. Oh, right, OK. Right, from the famous Legsit headline to the shameful BBC headline about Jacinda Ardern, can a woman have it all? I was appalled by that. You can't help but feel the system is stacked against women in politics and a lot of other areas. Women, by far, receive more abuse and criticism than men, and with social media being everywhere, women are forced more and more under the spotlight. It comes as this week in Parliament, a Labour MP for Canterbury, Rosie Duffield, was heckled in the Commons with some of her male colleagues shouting at her, pointing fingers and being actually, frankly, very aggressive, as she defended the government's blocking of the changes to the Scottish Parliament's legislation on gender identification. Now, joining me to discuss this is Emma Best, Conservative member of the London Assembly. Hello, Emma. Where are you?
Good evening.
Hello,
How
Emma.
are you?
Good. Thank you very much for joining me on a Friday night, giving up your valuable time. Right, OK.
Well, yeah, talk about women having them all. I'm a mother, so I'm just at home with the kids. So no crazy Friday nights for me.
Nice cup of tea on a Friday night, but don't tell the kids there's gin in that mug. So, I mean, Emma, how do you think... Firstly, I want to ask you, as a woman and a politician, what you thought about the way Jacinda phrased her stepping down?
I thought it was, I mean, I wouldn't say that politically I'm aligned or a particular fan of Jacinda Ardern, but I did think it was a really, really nice speech standing down. And I suddenly kind of felt the heartstrings of, you know, this is a really good way to exit the main stage of politics. I mean, my feelings slightly got dampened by the kind of left-wing fawning over Jacinda Ardern that followed that day, which I think kind of ignored a lot of the backstory and the things that New Zealanders may be feeling in their political world and in their country. But genuinely, I think that was a good statement, and it was well made, and I thought that went down well.
She had nothing in the tank, and I can't imagine a male politician, leader of a country, saying anything like that. So it was quite female-orientated, which led to the BBC headline of, you know, can women ever really have it all, which I personally thought was staggeringly sexist. So can I ask, as a woman and a mum working in politics, is sexism still an issue? Do women have to deal with this on a daily basis still?
Sexism obviously still exists, and I experience sexism. I've been called a blonde bimbo, which perhaps in some ways I take as a bit of a compliment, because I've never seen myself as being able to be grabbing the bimbo title, you know. But there's certainly sexism that exists. But what I would say is that it doesn't define politics, and actually there are much more people out there on the side of women. You know, I've had the support from the Conservative Party of Women to Win. I'm a part of 50-50 Parliament, and know a lot of supportive men. And you talked about that case earlier with Miriam Cates being shouted down in Parliament. Actually, what you saw is her colleague, Paul Bristow, immediately come and sit next to her, recognise that situation and come and support her. And so I think it's really important, especially because we want to encourage more women into politics, to make it clear that I think that the overriding picture is good when it comes to politics, and people want to support women and want them to get on. Of course, as I think you mentioned earlier, any walk of life, you experience sexism, of course you do. But the overwhelming feeling is that people are there for you and people want women to succeed.
Do you think that, I mean, it's Angela Rayner and Tracy Brabin, if I remember right, they were both criticised for their outfits, weren't they, what they were wearing? I mean, you know, you don't seem to get that with male politicians. Oh, look, he's got his tie slightly undone, he's a bit of a come-on on it. Whereas Angela and Tracy both had that because of their inappropriate outfits. I mean, you know, is that something you still face as well as female in politics?
I think certainly that there's an aspect to that, but I would always draw attention as well to the fact that I do think men in politics also get this sort of abuse. Now, I said earlier, I'm not a fan of Jacinda Ardern politically. I'm certainly not a fan of Jeremy Corbyn. But if you see the abuse that he sometimes got for the outfits he was wearing, it does happen. So I would just say men did face it as well. And I thought it was very interesting with that BBC title about can women have it all? Because I took it on the other side of looking and thinking, why don't we ask that question of men? It's almost dismissive that men don't care enough about their families, that we shouldn't be asking if they have it all. So I do think we have to look at both sides of the coin on this as well, because there's another side to this as well, where we can't forget that, you know, men do suffer abuse in politics as well, and it looks slightly different, but let's not just push it to the side because they're men and they can handle it.
And Emma, it is great that more and more females, young females in particular, are going into politics, and it's to be positively encouraged. But do you think the old adage is still true that a woman going into politics, you have to be twice as good and work twice as hard as the men?
I think, like I said, there's a lot of support, so I think that is getting better, and I would never want to put people off. But as much, you know, and I think you see this with ableism, ageism and sexism, you just get less chances, you know? So if you muck up with a man, sometimes it can be seen as they just had an off day. With a woman, they're just not quite up to it sometimes. So I think that adage does exist. But I would say on the other shoe, there's enough people that understand that it's important to have women in politics and getting behind us.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope it continues this way and more young women to get involved in politics. We are 50% of the population. Actually, I think we might be 51% of the population now. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Emma. Really appreciate it. Have a lovely weekend with your little ones. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Right, OK, now the serious stuff. Do you know how many units are in a small glass of wine? This is tea, by the way. Stick around to find out. See you soon.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you for hanging around on a Friday night. Right, it's January. I know it's the longest month of the year. I mean, how long's this month gone on for? And we've heard this week that in Canada, they've celebrated January by warning you about your booze intake again. Only drink one bottle a year or something or other. Any case, we have already seen and been told how great it is cutting back on drinking. I mean, non-stop, New Year, all that sort of thing. Maybe this is some year when we reflect, we might have overdone it over Christmas, mightn't we? But where do we start? The first step is often knowing how much alcohol is too much and how many units are in your drink. What is this units thing? Joining me to discuss this is a doctor. Oh, my God, I'm so going to regret this, aren't they? Dr. Laurence Gurlis. Hello, Dr. Laurence. Thank you very much. You are going to be kind to us, aren't you? It's a Friday night.
I'll try and be kind. Listen,
Thank you very much.
Listen, I'm not here to spoil people's fun.
No,
at the end of the day, we give...
I was always told... Is it OK to call you Laurence?
Yeah.
Good, excellent. I was always told, Laurence, that as long as I didn't drink as much as my doctor, I was OK. I know that's an old truism, but they're truisms because they're often true. Right, we've heard this week...
Your problem there, Dawn, is I don't drink anything.
Yeah, I
so
know,
everyone
I heard
drinks
that
all
as
of it.
well. You've got some hidden vice, I can imagine.
Right. GP.
Laurence, we've heard this week that Canada have introduced a new guidance about drinking. Can you just tell us very quickly, briefly, what they are suggesting with alcohol?
Yeah, the Canadian government, in their wisdom, well known for telling people how to live their lives, has said you should drink no more than 2 units a week. Bear in mind the UK guidelines are 2 units a day, so the Canadians want you to cut down to 2 units a week. And I wish them luck trying to enforce that, or trying to even get people to go anywhere near that, quite frankly.
So what, I mean, you know, what should we be drinking, she asked nervously. So what's the sensible guidance in this country?
Look, January is a good time to not drink anything. I don't want to destroy the pub trade. And alcohol is serious. I see the problems that alcohol causes. There are pockets of society, students, businessmen, the elderly, who still drink too much, and it's socially unacceptable to say I don't want to drink. But let's lighten the mood a little bit. I think what the Canadians are doing is totally unrealistic. It's the job of doctors and public health to give advice. Whether you take it or not is up to you. I'm a libertarian. I think you're free to do with your body whatever you want, quite frankly. We give the advice. You either take it or don't. I think 2 units a day is probably a reasonable amount to consume. 2 units a week is so unrealistic. I don't know why the Canadians even bother, because it's just laughable, quite frankly.
Excellent, glad you agree. Right, but now I've invited back Paul Connew and former newspaper editor, and Reem Ibrahim, sorry I've been drinking, no I haven't, a Conservative commentator, because we're all a bit confused, aren't we, about what a unit actually is. So, Dr. Laurence, you are going to give us a little test, aren't you?
Yeah, who's going? Well, the first thing is, how many units do you think? Bear in mind the Canadians want you to drink 2 units a week. How many units do you think are in a large glass of red wine?
Ooh, Reem?
I'm going to say 2.
I think probably 4.
I didn't like that chuckle. I didn't like that chuckle there. Go on.
It's 3. So down the middle. So. You drink a large glass of red wine. You've already gone over Justin Trudeau's limits, I'm afraid.
That's not a large one, though.
How about a small glass of white wine?
Oh gosh.
Assuming less, I'm going to go with 2.
I'll go for 2 as well.
Yeah, it's actually 1.5. White wine, less sugar, therefore less alcohol. So yeah, that's probably better for you. Next one. How about a pint of cider?
Oh, my Lord. Go on, Reem, go on.
Oh.
You're a student.
3. I am a student, but I can't say I drink too much. I'm probably going to say 3.
Oh, student.
No, I can't stand cider, but I'm going to say, is that a pint of cider?
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
5. Oh,
no, it's actually 2.
5.
It's actually 2 units for a pint.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And bear in mind, wine is more concentrated alcohol than most beers. So next one, how about a pint of lager? And I think I've given you a hint on the way there.
Right, OK. Well, lager's my favourite. I'm a lager girl. Reem,
I'd say 4 then, in that case, if it's high.
I'll say 3.5.
No, it's a pint of lager is still 2 units.
Oh,
so,
I'm liking this quiz much more than I thought.
Making us feel better about ourselves.
I'm actually feeling better by the moment. Laurence, we love you. Thank you very much. Can you come and be my doctor? OK, what's next? Go on, you can press us.
A double gin and tonic, and I mean not the ones you pour yourself, the ones you get in a pub or bar.
Is that a
double
slim night
G&T?
I don't think whether it's slim though makes any difference to the alcohol, Paul.
No,
I'm doing something wrong.
I don't know it dilutes it in it.
Go on, Reem, what do you reckon?
I'm assuming it depends on the type of gin as well, because some of them have higher concentrates of alcohol. But I'm going to guess, as an average, probably about 3.
This is the girl that studied her gin.
I'm going to say 2.5.
Yeah, it's 2. Yeah, 1 unit of spirits is one serving. So double G&T is 2 units. Okay, next one. How about a mojito? Something a bit more exotic.
Ooh. I like cocktails.
I'm going
to assume 3 as well.
I think a bit higher than that.
Because it's got the rum.
I think 4.
No, you can have 2.5 on that one, so that gives you a bit more. bit more room for manoeuvre if you're in the UK, none at all if you're in Canada.
My grandson's just emigrated to Canada. I'm sure he won't be obeying the government guidelines. He won't be.
It's Ottawa rules here tonight. A glass of champagne, there you are, for any champagne socialists or otherwise.
Right, yeah, I'm champagne social. Call me what you want. I like champagne. Right, Reem, quickly on this one.
I'm going to say 2.
I'd say 2 as well.
Yeah, it's 1.5. It's a nice dry white wine champagne. And finally, a double whiskey.
Oh, right, double whiskey. Quickly, we're running out of time.
I'm allergic to whiskey, but I would say 2.5.
Yeah, it's 2 units. Yeah,
2 units.
There you go.
Oh, you've
then
cheered
now
me
you
up.
know what you can drink for until the end of January, and then we'll let you do what you like.
Laurence, thank you so much for joining. You've cheered me up enormously. We can all write cheers. Thank you very much. Happy Friday night, everybody. We hope you've enjoyed the show. I've been Laurence, tall, blonde, it's close. And coming up next is my old mucker, Mark Dolan. And he has got some treats in store for you that may or may not involve alcohol, but knowing Mark, it probably won't. But thank you for joining me and have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you all very soon. Cheers.
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 Hello. It was a beautiful day out there on Friday, and it's going to stay that way into the weekend for England and Wales. Milder conditions, though, in the far west, spreading into parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland during the evening, accompanied by wet and windy weather as well. Meanwhile, for much of the UK as we head into Friday evening, it's clear skies and light winds, temperatures soon falling below freezing widely, and by the end of the night, -3, -4 Celsius across much of the UK, -7 to -10 degrees over some parts of snow-covered northern England and northeast Scotland. Freezing fog patches around first thing as well, from the Vale of York into the Midlands, Welsh Marches, southwest England. They'll be slow to clear, could cause some issues on the roads first thing. But a completely different story for western Scotland and for Northern Ireland. Here, cloud and rain will have been increasing through the night, and a strengthening wind with gales around western coasts of Scotland and the Northern Isles by the afternoon, along with those outbreaks of rain. Those outbreaks of rain will reach parts of the Grampians, falling into cold air, leading to the risk of freezing rain by the afternoon here. But apart from the cloudy, breezy, damp weather in the northwest, we're also going to see plenty of dry weather across much of the rest of the UK, with clear skies once again leading to widespread frost. This time it's more confined on Saturday night to the southeastern quarter of the UK, with the East Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast seeing temperatures widely below -3 Celsius, and some freezing fog once again to contend with. Elsewhere across the UK, it's a cloudy and damp start to Sunday. Outbreaks of rain into Scotland, Northern Ireland, western fringes of England and Wales, an increasing breeze and increasingly mild temperatures by Sunday and Monday in some western areas up to 10 or 11 Celsius. Meanwhile, we keep the chilly air in the southeast into the start of next week.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday.